My name is Jessica Monger. I'm the External Affairs Director at the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship. I'm joined here with my colleague, Jillian. She is the Awards Program Manager of the Baccalaureate Scholarship. So I know a lot of us know this answer, but just to kind of go over it in general of why college and why the scholarship was created. As we know, most jobs in the state of Washington that earn a living wage require some type of education after high school. And most of those jobs require STEM training. So what we're really trying to do when we're working with students is help them understand that what you study in college matters, and some degrees lead to higher paying wages and are in higher demand. We also know that there's a significant gap between the jobs employers need and the skills of Washington residents. So we are really trying to close that gap to ensure more students are graduating with the credentials they need to compete for the jobs that employers are hiring in our state. So that really brings us to the mission of the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship. We work to build pathways into high demand Washington careers for Washington students. And we do that through a number of our scholarship programs. So a little background for context, WSOS was created about 12 years ago. It's a public-private partnership. So it's a model that hadn't really been tried anywhere before. It creates a dollar for dollar state match. It started with Microsoft and Boeing coming together, working with then Governor Chris Gregoire to say, hey, we have these jobs in the state and we don't have the talent pipeline that we need to hire. We'll commit a certain amount of money, started with $25 million to get a dollar for dollar state match. Over time, our donors have increased manyfold. We now have more than 8,000 graduates, over 14,000 current scholars in the pipeline at various public and private college universities, as well as over 2,000 community college students in our career and technical scholarship program. So we've really grown a lot in the last 12 years. So why WSOS? I like to talk about this just because the state of financial aid has really changed in Washington over the last few years in a great way. The state has made a massive investment in financial aid. We have one of the most robust financial aid packages in the United States. But WSOS is still a vital piece of that. And that is because we know our program comes with both financial aid as well as support services. So we know it's not enough for a student to just get into to get the Washington College grant. We know that they also need the support services, particularly in the fields that we support. So the high demand trade, STEM, and healthcare programs that are really demanding, and where most of our students, 3/4 of our students are students of color, first gen, more than half are women. So a lot of students in those demographics are underrepresented in these fields. So we've intentionally designed the program to ensure those who have been historically left out get access to those opportunities by partnering with some of the world's best companies to make sure not only are they getting into college, but they're getting through college and then connecting to an employer upon graduation so that they're able to really graduate faster and with less debt. Our 4-year graduation rate for the bachelor's program is just about 50%, and our 6-year graduation rate is just about 78%. So it's significantly higher than state and national averages. And we believe that's due to the model that we use to really ensure that students have what they need and they get the connections that they also need. So when we first started, we were a baccalaureate scholarship program only. That was a $22,500 scholarship. That was for students pursuing STEM or healthcare degrees at public and private colleges and universities in the state of Washington. So this current application that's open right now closes February 29th. That's our 13th cohort we're recruiting for. So that program has been around for a while. About 5-6 years ago, the legislature expanded our program to create the Career and Technical Scholarship. That's a $1,500 per quarter, every quarter scholarship for students pursuing apprenticeships, associate degrees, or certificates. There's an initiative of that program, the Rural Jobs Program, that basically provides additional dollars to our rural students, many of which we know are facing some of the highest barriers, just accessing college, being farther away from campuses. So we have provided additional dollars for those students. We do have one graduate program. It's very specific. It's for nurses looking to become nurse practitioners. That's up to $25,000 for those students to pursue DNP or an MSN to become a nurse practitioner. So a little bit about kind of what I was mentioning with financial aid. So WSOS is intended to be flexible. So legislators looked at how we are thinking about the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship in particular, and deemed it private for purposes of calculating financial aid. And what that means is that it can stack on top of the other aid that a student is getting. So if they're getting the Pell Grant, the Washington College Grant, College Bound, those aid sources can help cover things like tuition, maybe books, fees, etc. And then WSS can come on top to fund up to cost of attendance. And that is really critical for covering things like living expenses, transportation, childcare, food, housing, etc. What we really call the true cost of going to college, or the cost outside of tuition. So for a lot of our students, they can use those for those living expenses. But I always use the example of welding, where oftentimes it's a $1,500 worth of tools or equipment before you even enroll in the first day of classes. So WSOS is a great way to cover some of those high cost tools and to ensure that our students have the time they need to study and compete to get into these high demand programs. We know places like programs like engineering, computer science are really challenging to get into. And if a student is stacking a bunch of part-time work, full-time work, in addition to their studies, it makes it that much challenging to graduate quickly, on time, and get through. So we think that flexibility is why so many more of our scholars are graduating on time and with less debt. And that's compared with peers, students who come from similar backgrounds pursuing similar fields. So this slide gives you just a sense of how to stack financial aid. So this shows you how basically you have the true cost of college, with Eva is our student example, where we're showing the resident tuition, the estimate of housing and food, so that total cost of attendance is those two things combined together, and how she's someone who qualifies for a maximum Pell Grant, Washington College Grant, and how she's able to stack those together. So then you can get WSOS on top of that to really lower the amount of unmet need, hopefully lowering the amount of debt or part-time work she would need to take on in order to make that affordable. So we really want students to hear the importance of applying for and stacking their aid to ensure they have all the funding that's really necessary to be able to focus on their studies. So now I think I'm going to take the next slide and pass it over to my colleague, Jillian.
Hi, my name is Jillian Lewis. Jessica already introduced me as the Baccalaureate Awards Manager. I am going to dive in a bit into eligibility, some information about upcoming deadlines, financial aid, and then give a run through of our application live. But Jessica, you stopped sharing, but I actually need you to share. I don't think that I have the ability to.
Oh, I thought I gave you the ability to click through it. I will click through it for you, no problem.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so to be eligible, first of all, an applicant must be a Washington State resident who has earned or will earn a high school diploma or GED in Washington State. The student must have a cumulative GPA of 2.75 or greater, and they must plan to pursue an eligible major at an eligible institution in Washington State. So to be eligible, a major must be considered STEM or healthcare. It must lead to a high demand field of work in Washington State, and it must earn a living wage. Jessica has the link to the BAS eligible majors list there. You can also find it on our website. If you click onto the BAS applicant page, there's a link to it. But brief overview, we have over 100 eligible majors for the baccalaureate scholarship. This list is updated every year based on new market data, and majors do occasionally drop off or are added based on that data. We do consider community input when compiling that list. So if you are looking for a major that you think is eligible based on this criteria and you don't see it, you can always reach out to our team and we will take a look at that major and let you know what data we would need you to provide for us to update our list accordingly. So the last piece of eligibility for our scholarship is related to financial need. So students must be low or middle income which is defined as up to 125% of the median family income in Washington state. We do also have a helpful chart on our website that breaks down what that income is based on family size. Students must also submit the FAFSA or the WSFA in order to be eligible. Okay, so I mentioned that students have to be pursuing an eligible major at an eligible institution. Washington is home to 6 public four-year colleges and universities, more than 20 independent colleges and universities, and 34 community colleges. All of these are eligible receiving institutions for the BAS scholarship. Jessica mentioned earlier that we do have a scholarship for community and technical college students pursuing those technical degrees or apprenticeships. And I want to make it really clear that if a student's ultimate goal is to receive a bachelor's degree, even if they start at a community college, they would still want to apply for the baccalaureate degree. So try not to get too hung up on where the student is starting. It really matters what their ultimate goal is, if it's a four-year degree or if it's a certificate or an apprenticeship, then we would direct them to our CTS scholarship. Students are also able to transfer colleges, and their funding will follow them as long as they are continuing to pursue their studies at an eligible institution. I should have noted also on the previous slide, this is true as well as if they change majors. As long as they're continuing to study an eligible major, they can change majors, and that is all right. Okay, so a couple of key dates and deadlines before I dive into more information about the FAFSA and the WSFA. Jessica mentioned this, our baccalaureate degree application deadline is coming up on February 29th at 9:00 p.m. That is a hard deadline. Students won't be able to access the application after that deadline, so we really want to hammer that home. Students also must have submitted their FAFSA or the WSFA by April 5th in order to be eligible for our scholarship. That is an extension. Typically, we require applicants to submit their FAFSA or their WSFA by our scholarship deadline for us to verify eligibility. But given the financial aid landscape this year, we've extended to April 5th. That said, and you're going to hear me say this a number of times, we are urging applicants to submit their FAFSA or WSFA as soon as possible. Okay, so we recognize that students are facing unprecedented challenges with financial aid this year, given the rollout of the new FAFSA form. We also know that this is particularly true for mixed status families, where the student is eligible for federal financial aid and should fill out the FAFSA, but their parents do not have social security numbers. WSOS is committed to supporting applicants in overcoming these challenges. I already mentioned that we did extend our FAFSA WSFA submission deadline to April 5th to try to accommodate applicants who are having challenges submitting their financial aid forms. We've also added a field to our application this year that allows applicants to upload a screenshot confirming that they submitted their FAFSA or WSFA. This isn't a required field, but it will help us verify eligibility quickly despite processing delays. But never fear, we will also reach out to applicants individually if we cannot verify their FAFSA or WSFA submission through our data sharing agreement with the state. And we will give them another opportunity to submit documentation confirming that they submitted the FAFSA or the WSFA. Given this landscape, we are strongly urging students to get started on their financial aid applications as soon as possible. We have heard of instances where mixed status families are not able to submit the FAFSA easily, or they are choosing not to submit the FAFSA due to a pretty understandable lack of trust with the federal government and also just general confusion and fears given how difficult this rollout has been for those families in particular. In that scenario where there is zero chance that the family or the student will submit the FAFSA this year, we have heard from state partners that they are recommending students submit the WSFA instead. This would allow those students to access state aid, our scholarship, and other institutional aid. And considering all of the challenge that these mixed status families and students are experiencing, it's understandable why they might want to go that route. But we really want to make sure that students and partners who are supporting students are aware that if a student submits the WSFA instead of the FAFSA, they will not be able to receive any federal aid that they might be eligible for. That will likely lead to gaps in their financial aid package. We also want to caution students that if they fill out the WSFA and then change their mind or forget and fill out the FAFSA later on, we've heard that that could cause confusion in the system and it would make them ineligible for any aid at all. So very cautionary, but we want to share information that we are hearing, and just let all of our partners know that we're in this with you and we're trying to figure out how we can help the students and make sure that they meet our eligibility criteria. So I'm going to move on to a few tips for students when they are applying. I've mentioned this so many times, but again, complete FAFSA or WSFA by April 5th at the latest. Failure to submit those forms are the #1 reason applicants are ultimately ineligible for our scholarship. Again, if your student has submitted the FAFSA or WSFA before our deadline, upload a confirmation, a screenshot that will help us just check a box and say, yep, you met that eligibility criteria. Going into kind of the meat of the application, we do require 2 short answers, and we provide a short answer guide that's accessible on our website. That provides the questions themselves that students will see on our application, as well as a couple of examples of real essays that were scored high in prior application cycles. We want students to rest assured we do not score for English language ability or grammar. What we really want to know is that an applicant has explored their field or major, is committed to that field or major, and is likely to persist. So we ask students how they have explored their field or major. These can be formal opportunities, but they can also be informal. A student could have done research on their own at the library, and that we want to hear about that just as much as a student who might have had an opportunity um, that one applicant might not have had. So we are looking for applicants that have demonstrated strong interest and dedication to those fields. Okay, so one common issue that we see in the application is that students submit the wrong transcript. So we've done a lot of work this year to redesign the way that we ask the questions in the application to make it clear what transcript a student should submit. So I would just make sure your student is paying attention to the prompts that they receive. It should be the most recent institution that they attended. So if they graduated from high school and then attended some college, they would want to upload that college transcript. Again, we provide more information in the application itself. Also, it's important that what they upload has the information that we need to see. So sometimes we get screenshots or PDFs that are cut off and we can't actually verify the data. So we need to see the name of the most recent institution, the name of the applicant, the number of earned credits they've received, and their cumulative GPA. Just a couple other reminders. So we have heard from applicants this year that it is taking 90 minutes or less to complete the application, including those short answer questions. So it is not long. You could sit down in one sitting and complete it. And we also are providing support to applicants this year in the form of office hours. So I have linked them here. We've had them every Tuesday throughout the month of February. So we had one today from 11 to 1, and we have 2 more sessions. These are informal. I'm on the line in case an applicant wants to jump on and ask a question. Um, Once students have created their account for their application, they'll receive a confirmation email that will also have links to these drop-in office hours, so they can reference that as well. So with that, Jessica, if you're able to kind of, oh, I think I can share my screen. Okay, perfect. I am going to share my screen now and actually do a little walkthrough of what your students will see when they are trying to apply for our scholarship. Okay. All right. Jessica, can you verify you're seeing the right screen for me, our homepage?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, great. All right. So I just wanted to direct you first to our homepage so you can see where we want you to go. The first place you can find the link to our application is the home page. You scroll down and it's this first button on the right. You can also take a look at applicants, apply for a scholarship, or go directly to the baccalaureate scholarship page. And you're going to see that same option to apply now. Once you click that button, if my internet will catch up with me, the first thing that you're going to see before you can create an account to complete your application is an eligibility check. This is our first screen to make sure that applicants are in the right place, that they are likely to meet our eligibility requirements, and that they're not better suited for the CTS scholarship. So assuming they click through these and answer the questions that would make them eligible, they'll say check eligibility, and then they will have the option to create an account. I want to highlight that we've provided a lot of helpful links throughout to help applicants answer those questions. Okay, so I already have an application started. You'll see this, a returning user login to continue your application. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. So now you're in the application itself. A few things I want to note, we highlight the application deadline. If the applicant has not completed their application, this will say incomplete. In this case, this is my test. I have completed the application, but I'm still able to go in and show you what the different sections look like. We do have a link here to frequently asked questions that are very helpful. And then we have more information around the FAFSA and the WSOS. And I just found this will be changed to the April 5th deadline. So to actually navigate throughout the application, you're going to use this bar to the left. We've broken it out into sections. I want to highlight that you can save your application throughout, but in order to do that, you have to complete the entire page. So the only way that this page will save is if I fill out the whole page. Otherwise, the data will be lost. That's not ideal, but that is a limitation that we have. If you try to save, the application will show you the fields that need to be input in order for you to save. Okay, let's see. We do indicate here there are some questions that we ask for reporting purposes. They are not used to verify eligibility, and they're not used for selection either. So we document that in those cases. Okay, so in the academic section, we ask some questions about academic history. This first question allows us to determine the student's first generation status. And then we also ask for an academic history that will allow us to paint a picture of where the student is, whether they're currently a high school senior who will be graduating before or by June of 2024. It also helps us understand if they have completed some college credit. And all of these questions will help us prompt the student with what transcript they need to upload. So let's see, I think I have some incomplete information in here, and so it's giving me this textual update with the appropriate transcript upload. Assuming the student has filled this out correctly, they would be told which transcript to upload. We also do have a little application toolkit that demonstrates which transcript to provide. And this is where the applicant will submit the transcript. So we ask a few more questions. This academic future section is where your applicant will indicate which college they plan to attend and which major they plan to pursue. These things can change during the acceptance period. Students are able to tell us for sure which college they're going to. So this just demonstrates their best guess or their plan. As long as when they accept the scholarship, they're still attending an eligible institution and pursuing an eligible major, they'll be fine. We just want to make sure we send funds to the right place. We do also have a brief financial section, and this is important this year in particular because given all of the processing delays with the FAFSA and the WSFA, we may rely on some more of the self-reported data in cases where we can't verify the submission through our state partners. So we do ask applicants to report their household size, adjusted gross income, and untaxed income. We recommend that in cases where the student, basically we recommend that a student reference the tax return for themselves if they're an independent student, or their family if they're a dependent student, to provide the most accurate information. This is also the field that I mentioned earlier, which is new this year, where a student can upload a screenshot of the confirmation email demonstrating that they have submitted the FAFSA or the WSFA. It's not required, but this will help us determine eligibility quickly this year. Okay, so the last substantive section of this application is the short essay section. We strongly recommend that students complete these essays in Word, do whatever they want to do editing wise, and then once it's in its final form, copy and paste. Because we have had situations where students have started their essay, gotten sidetracked, submitted their application, and didn't realize that they never actually finished their essay. And as long as the student is within the word count, our application won't be able to tell if that's the essay they intended to plug in or not. Again, reiterating, we do not score or review for grammar, writing ability, or English language skills. And although we do utilize volunteers to read and score essays, there's no personal identifying information that goes along with those essays. You can also find the link here to the that little toolkit that gives an overview of the essay questions and examples of essays that have been scored highly in the past. So with that, the last section is an agreement section, depending on whether the student is a minor or 18 years or older. Either they will sign off here or their parent or guardian will sign off to provide release and consent information. And then with that, if this was an incomplete application or an application that hadn't been submitted, you'd see a button at the bottom that says submit. I have already submitted, so I don't have that option now. But this is key. This says until the application closes, you are free to edit your application. So that just means even though you've submitted, we do not pull this information until after February 29th. So an applicant can still access their application, update any information they'd like until that firm deadline of February 29th at 9 o'clock. All right, so that is it for my planned content right now, but I know Jessica and I are happy to answer questions. I'll stop sharing if I can.
I think you did.
Thank you.
Any questions? Happy to help answer or direct.
I do have a question. I actually managed an opportunity grant at a community college, which is designed to help students for a year. It's 45 credits. I don't know if you're familiar with the opportunity grant. Yes. Okay. So typically I tell my students if I tell them to apply after the opportunity grant or like right now, if I know that their opportunity grant is going to be done, then I tell them to apply for next year. Is that if they've already taken because it used to be that you could apply for WSOS either as a senior or as a freshman in college, or first year student. Is this correct advice, or do you have any information about that? Like what advice I should be giving my students?
I can speak to part of this, and then if we're not hitting on your question correctly, let me know. We do admit students, they can be rising college freshmen, so high school seniors when they are applying. We also do accept, though, a small pool of students in their first or second year of college. So as long as the student does not have more than 90 college credits or 60 semester credits when they apply, they are eligible. However, the bulk of our seats are reserved for entering or rising college freshmen. So they would have the best shot at receiving our scholarship if they are high school seniors when they apply. Um, our scholarship is last dollar in. Jessica showed that slide that shows how our scholarship stacks on top of other aid. So oftentimes a student will receive Pell Grant, the WCG, other forms of institutional aid or local aid um, that will cover their cost of tuition and their fees. But what's great about WSOS is that we cover everything else that gets calculated in the student's cost of attendance. So even if they're able to hit again their tuition fees, if there's any room left in unmet need, we slide in at the end and we can cover up to that cost of attendance. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it sounds to me like it would be um, if we're able to catch the students before their freshman year or before their first year, it would be better for them to submit the application earlier rather than later.
Yeah, because of the fact that we do reserve the bulk of seats for that population of students, I'd say that would be helpful. But we do, we do have, I think it's 150 seats reserved in total, or 250, sorry, for um, existing college students who
Do
can
you know
apply.
if it's the same case for the CTS side of it?
Hmm, that is a very good question. I don't believe that seats are
Yeah.
reserved based on high school status. Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Jessica.
Yeah, they are not for the current technical scholarship. And that's because the baccalaureate scholarship was really designed for high school seniors or like early in their college career, just because we know persistence rates are so much higher if we can get them to enroll directly after. But the community college system and our career and technical scholarship, the slots are not reserved for specific like numbers of credits or how far along they are in their program.
Okay, and I have, it used to be that FAFSA used to take into consideration if there was more than one person attending college in the family. And so I had a question about whether that AGI it was a hard stop, or does WSOS consider when there's more than one person attending college? Is it a hard
Yeah,
no, I
that
guess? Is it
it's
like
that yeah,
if
it is a hard no because we're tied to financial aid requirements. That was a tough thing to learn about this year. So we uh, yeah, are very sympathetic to students
Mhm.
in that situation.
Yeah, because I think I always really like WSOS because because there's so many students that don't qualify for FAFSA because they're above that amount, but their families don't make enough really to help, especially when they have multiple students attending college. So yeah, I feel bad for those students.
Yeah, I mean, we still do go up to middle income, but yeah, we can't go beyond that 125% MFI. So hopefully we're still able to support some in that middle income range. But I think the way this new calculation, there's just a lot of questions about how it's going to work specifically for that's a big loss for, a family that has two or even three kids in college.
Hmm. And there's and the student has to, if the student submits the FAFSA, but their parents, we have some students whose parents just will not fill out the FAFSA for different reasons. The student has to submit a FAFSA. Even you said so I heard you say they should at least submit the WASFA.
So, Jillian, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, we are advising students if a student is eligible for financial aid, however we can support a student in that family to submit the FAFSA, that is the best route to take. However, if this is a case where the parents absolutely will not submit the FAFSA for whatever reason, we have heard from other partners that they're advising in this year that the students submit the WASFA so that they'll be eligible at least for the state aid and institutional aid. And for our purposes, we need students to submit either FAFSA or WASFA to be eligible. We're just extremely cautious with advising students to go that route because of aid that they can miss out on, the federal aid they can miss out on.
But they won't get any if the parent doesn't provide information. So I don't know
Yep.
that they were missing out on anything because the parent won't provide it.
Yeah,
And
that
so does the WASA not require them to submit parent income?
the WASFA. So what we have heard in just in conversations with state folks and others is that the WASFA is less it is designed for students without documentation, and so what they have to submit is different, and so it is much more approachable, and it's also smoother. It's considerably smoother than what's happening with the FAFSA. So it's just a much better option for families who understandably have concerns about submitting identification documents to the federal government, especially if they spent many years trying to avoid being, raising awareness of who they are. So that's why the WASFA is preferred and much more flexible. And the advice is really clear. If there's just no chance they're going to do the FAFSA, we would rather them get access to things like WSOS, institutional aid, and the Washington grant. Better than nothing. And then if hopefully later on FAFSA gets better and they could potentially go through that process to get access to federal aid if they qualified. So it's important that students don't fill out both and don't have like them and their parents do both, because that's will create issues in the system. But if it's do nothing, we'd rather have them do WASFA over get some aid through WASFA than no aid through completing no financial aid paperwork.
Okay, my last question. I have so many questions. I had a student whose parent submitted wrong information, and he is in the process of fixing it. Should the student if the issue doesn't get fixed by April 5th, will the students still have access to the scholarship? So the student already submitted, or the parent already did their taxes, but it's wrong and they're in the process of fixing it, but they don't know how long it's going to take.
Right. So the first thing, which is good, is that our first eligibility check will just confirm that they submitted. And so that's good. In that case, that's kind of tricky because usually we do rely on the data that we pull from our state partner to verify that what income tier the student is in for eligibility purposes. So I don't really know what advice to give other than that really does need to be done before April 5th, just to make sure that we have the accurate data. They're welcome if it's coming up to April 5th and they have not been able to correct it. We would like to know about that because it might be a bigger issue. But we can't guarantee that we would be able to work around that. But on our application and then also on the throughout the website and on the confirmation email that the student will receive, there's an inbox. It's called info@opportunitiescholarship.org, and that student can email us. We monitor that inbox daily, and we would love to help support that student if we're able to.
Okay, one more question. What is the percentage of students who apply that actually get the scholarship? Do you guys have that data?
Yeah, and it's so funny. I meant to touch on that and I totally forgot. I knew I was going to forget. It varies obviously depending on how many applicants we get each year, but typically we select 40 to 50% of applicants.
Awesome. That's still a really good number. It used to be higher, but that's still a really good number.
Yeah, our cohort sizes also change. So that when sometimes we've had a big donor come in, and so the cohort size is bigger, and then it kind of drops down. But yeah, it's still good odds for an application that shouldn't take longer than 60 to 90 minutes.
Yep.
All very good questions. Thank you for asking. And we know these are questions that are coming up all over the place. So I appreciate you asking because we're going to record this and post it so folks can watch it later.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Great. All right. Well, I think we can wrap up, Jillian, unless there's anything else you want to share.
No, just thank you so much for attending, and we hope to see some of your students apply.